Hello again. Welcome back. As usual, this is Back Eggling by Nightcat or Nightcat's Meow, most places online. And here I will be your coder kitty, teaching you about Linden's scripting language. This particular week, we have a fresh request from the Discord channel from Kalistar. I hope I'm pronouncing it halfway right. Kalistar, asking about using techniques we've already shown about detecting avatars in a sim and using it to keep track of regular visitation, how often a particular person comes to visit the sim. So we're going to show how to set that up. What we're going to do is we're going to use the basic avatar tracking, and we're going to store the information into lists and then increment a number up for how many times they appear. We'll also go through and design something that will show you how to set a time check. So basically, how regularly a person is there, or even how long they're there, give you sort of a gauge of their overall visitation, or be able to set it to tell you the duration of time between visits. Like, did that person show up on this day versus how many times they just popped in and out of the sim in general. So to start with, we want to remember how to detect the avatars in a sim, and I was already looking it up. It's get agent list, Control C. Thought my little arcade here made more sense for a tutorial and a visitor counter than my loft did. So those of you who watched a lot of these have seen that there's a decent amount of stuff scattered in this sim. It's intended to be a nice cyberpunk urban sim, but it didn't really take off. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set how often it's going to check. Set timer event. Let's make it 5 minutes. So 5 times 60 would be 300. So we set the timer for 300 seconds. Another way you could do this, if you want to have an easier control over it, is go integer min, shortened for minutes, equals 5, semicolon, set timer event, min times 60. Much simpler way of keeping track there. We don't actually need anything in touch start yet. Timer. Integer scope, list options. So, did not mean to stand from that. So it says here, scope, list options unused. So they meant to implement that to be something, but they never got around to it. So we want agent list region. Or, more useful, agent list parcel. If you don't have the full sim, parcel will work. If you have the sim subdivided, parcel will only give you the individual subdivision, region will give you the entire sim. But parcel is going to work in most circumstances particularly well. And options, we'll just close that off. Since it's implemented as an argument in the command, you have to have something there, even if it's not used. So we just put an empty list bracket there. So when it returns, and this will give us an example of it doing so. key ID, list to key, avatars and region, index, integer, list, avatars and region equals. There we go. This shows it right here, that basically it's treated as a list. So we have to set up something to process that list. So just dropping it in the timer by itself isn't going to help us much. So we're going to establish a list. List foo equals. So now we actually create a list and we can do something with that list. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to want to establish a permanent record of this, because you want to not just track who's there, but how regularly they show up. So you actually need to record the information. So list visit equals and list why am I screwing that up? List count equals. The reason we're doing this is it's easier to keep straight what to do with what. In this case, visit is going to track the keys of every avatar that shows up. Whereas this tracks how often an avatar appears. This here, I forgot to turn off my messages. This is just a buddy of mine, Zen. He does his own scripting tutorials in some places and has his own code stuff. He doesn't really have a YouTube channel for it, otherwise I'd link you to it, but he sells a lot of code out there. So now that we're establishing the list inside the timer section for who, we're going to integer length equals get list length who, integer I, and then your basic for loop. For I equals 0, semicolon, I is less than length, semicolon, I equals I plus 1. Now, a lot of people will tell you, by the way, when you're doing this, you can use I++ as a shorthand. It does the same thing. The amount of difference it makes is pretty minimal, and I find it just easier when reading it. I equals I plus 1. Got it. Boom. Don't have to think about it. Makes perfect sense. So even though some people say it's easier the other way, I prefer the method that is more intuitive, that just makes sense right off the bat. So now we're going to go down the list, and we're going to have another. There is actually a way to check to see if a item is in a given list or not. So there's an easier way than going item by item in there, and we're going to set that up. It's called list find list. Returns the integer of the index for the first instance of test in source. That's exactly what we need to know if somebody is already in the visitor list. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to key who. Actually, we don't need that as a key yet. String who equals Actually, we can't use who since we already named the list who. So whom would be too similar, it'd be too easy to confuse the code. Person equals list to string who I. Basically, this is establishing you're looking at the person whose key is at each entry in who. Now, this is not a thing I use that often, so I refer you to take a quick check at the wiki. LSL list to string. Make sure that I'm putting that in there correctly. List source, integer index, returns a string that is the index in source. Excellent. I remembered it correctly. We're also going to, just so you can see what's going on each step of the way, I need to turn off my bloody messages. Just so you can see what's going on as we go, integer debug equals true. Very good for tracking things. So, what we're going to do, if, actually easier to do it down in here. If debug, so basically if debug is set to true, which it is, owner say, all right, debug, owner say, testing item, then we're having to cast something that's an integer, I, into a string so that it can be used as a numeric character. And then just for convenience sake, we're doing key to name, which will take the key that we have and give us the name of the avatar attached to that. So that will tell us which one it's testing. And we can go ahead and test that part out. It will take 5 minutes before it triggers. So I will cut to the appropriate point. All right, welcome back. Actually had a bit of a trouble with how I was trying to set up explaining the next part, which is why you see the testing item 0 twice, because I spent several minutes dealing with that. Also remembered why I don't turn off my messages when I am recording these, because some of the feedback I use gets interfered with when I do that. So, returning to things here, we had left it with proving that yes, it shows that it is testing item 0 and me, because I'm the only one on the sim, exactly as we would have expected so far here. So the next thing we want to test for is this person, the key that we're looking at, are they already listed in the visitor list, or is this their first time? Are we creating an entry for them or updating an entry for them? The way we do that is we go back into here, back into Google, list find list. So for list find list, we have the list source, that is whatever list we're trying to look in, and the test, this is what we're trying to look 4. So, and it will produce an integer that says what point in the list that's found. 0 is the first entry in the list. -1 means it's not in the list at all. So, integer where equals list find list. We're looking in visit. We're looking for person. If where is exactly equal to -1, then visit equals visit plus person. That will add this person to the visitor list. But we also need to make sure we give them a tally on count. And in order to do that, we have to know exactly which entry on count we're going to add. In the case of adding a new person, it should be a matter of just adding it on the end. No problem. So count equals count plus 1, since lists are done in text. Boom. We now have added a person and registered that they have appeared on the count 1 time. Everybody's messaging today. So, if you do find it, so if where is anything other than -1, then you already know which entry on count to change. Because this is why we're doing this the easy way. We're doing 2 different lists. One contains the number for the people who have visited. One contains the list of the people. And as long as they're kept in perfect sync, that is no problem whatsoever. So we're going to add in here integer tally equals casting to an integer. Because it's a list, it gets stored as a string. So we're casting it back into an integer. List to string. Same way we did with things up here. Count. And then where, because that is where in the list it turned up. Then we raise tally by 1 because we're treating it as a number right now. And then we're going to edit that specific list item. So we want to replace returns a list of the copy of the destination with start through end removed and source inserted at start. Start through end removed. So this is exactly what we need. List, replace list. Except we're only going to replace one entry. So count equals list, replace list. List. Double check that's how this works. Returns a list. Yes, it returns a list. Copy of destination. Count. Source. Got it. Had to keep double checking. I haven't actually used this command before. All right, I'll figure out what's up with that in a second. So what this just did is it says count equals list replace list, which starts with count, the same one that we're replacing. The thing we're replacing is tally, which actually, there we go. And the specific slot it's replacing, it starts at where, it ends at where, because that's the very thing that we're reading and replacing. So, to hop back up here and figure out why this is a problem, it's a problem with list find list. Typing chat again. Return to integer with index of the first. So integer where equals list find list visit person. String is a valid thing to search for. Ah, I see the problem. It expects the thing you're searching for to be in the format of a list. We only need to search for one item, but there we go. Sorry, having to suppress some sneezing here. I don't think y'all want me sneezing into my mic. Very unpleasant. So, the next thing we're going to want to do is be able to verify these lists. So, to do that, on touch start, we're going to trigger a for loop. So, integer till equals get list length visit integer I for I equals 0, I is less than till semicolon I equals I plus 1 or say plus string I plus 1, because you want to have it actually show the number in human terms, not in computer list terms. So I plus 1, so 0 is registered visitor number 1. Let's put a hash in that. Then remember to break up the chunks of information. Its quotation mark starts the string and ends the string. A plus is to add more into it, so you can actually designate something with code. Then you're going to go back into is plus key to game visit comma I plus has been logged string list to string. Don't actually need the string there because the casting is part of setting this up, list to string, count, comma, I, times. Okay, that should actually properly account for things. Right, that's key to name requires it being pulled from a specific list. List. That was my screw up. Sorry about that. Kudos on anybody that caught it. So the key to name, the key it's pulling is the list to string visit for whichever check we're doing, whatever I is on. And that should solve it. All right. Once again, it's going to take a moment for the program to catch up. I will cut and be back to you then. All right, there we are. I'm back. I actually let it run a couple of rounds on this here so that we can confirm that this, in fact, is working. Yep, registered visitor number 1 is Rebecca Wendell and has been logged 2 times. So that's the best check I can give you without actually going through and having more people on the sample. So in the following weeks, I will go over how to subdivide this into a separate control script for memory management purposes, because if you're running a particularly large sim and need to track this data over a long period of time, that information can add up. For most cases, it's not going to be necessary, but it's a good excuse to go over the technique and actually look into how to split up your data handling. So that's a much better view there. So that'll be it for this week. As usual, I hope you all like it. We have a couple of you that have been... That looks too aloof, even for a cat. There's a couple of you that have been commenting on my videos regularly. I cannot emphasize enough how much that means to me. How that reminder of the usefulness of these videos keeps me going. So thank you so much for those. For those of you requesting videos in the Discord channel, I really appreciate that too. It really tells me what is wanted or needed so I can make sure that I'm focusing this properly. It gives me ideas for things sometimes that I would never have thought of trying to demonstrate on my own. This one and the previous one about message boards, I never would have thought to cover on my own. But they also cover a lot of techniques that are useful no matter what you're creating. So thank you. Keep them coming. Keep the ideas pouring in, and I'll keep the videos pouring out. The link to the Discord, as usual, will be in the description. Hope to see more of you on there. So I guess that's it for this week. As usual, good day, good luck, happy coding. Meow meow. Meow.